A Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder, Chapter 7, Part 2. Deal, Hannah agreed. But if you know anything about Ron's murder, I'll have to give the information to Bill. It doesn't have anything to do with Ron's murder. At least I don't think it does. I lied to you, Hannah. Ron and I were more than just friends. He was my GA sponsor. GA? Gamblers Anonymous. We meet every Tuesday night at the community college. That confession threw Hannah for a loop. You're a recovering gambler? Yes, but Boyd doesn't know. Danielle reached out and steadied herself against the wall. Could we sit down, Hannah? I don't feel very good. Hannah led her over to the couch and chairs that were arranged in a corner of the ladies' room. When Danielle had taken a seat on the couch, Hannah pulled up one of the chairs. You said that Boyd doesn't know about your addiction? No. He's not an easy man, Hannah. He wants perfection from a wife. I think he'd divorce me if he ever found out the truth. Hannah suspected that Danielle was right. Coach Watson demanded perfection from everyone around him. He was hard on his team when they made errors on the playing field or the court, and he'd even be harder on Danielle. Danielle might be exaggerating when she said that her husband would divorce her, but Hannah was willing to bet that he'd be plenty upset. You said you go to the GA meetings every Tuesday night. Doesn't Boyd ask you where you're going? I told him I was taking an art class at the college. I had to lie to him, Hannah. It was time to cut Danielle a little slack, and Hannah knew it. I can understand that. I'd probably do the same thing in your place. Were you at the GA meeting last night? Yes, I was there. How about Ron? Ron was there too. He never missed a meeting. Hannah zeroed in on the crux of the matter. Did you go home from the meeting with him? Of course not. I thought that Boyd would be back by then, and we were going to drive out to the hub to have a late supper together. Boyd really likes their steaks. He says an athlete doesn't get enough protein from chicken and fish, and he always makes his boys eat plenty of red meat when they're in training. Hannah had seen the boys from Coach Watson's teams wolfing down hamburgers at Hal and Rose's cafe, and she didn't think there was much danger they'd be protein deficient. But Danielle was digressing, and Hannah needed to get her back on track. Your husband didn't come home last night, did he? No. When I walked in, there was a message from Boyd on the answering machine. He said he'd decided to stay over at his mother's house, and he'd be home by noon today. He doesn't see her that often, and I should have just taken it in stride, but I expected him to come home, and it just threw me off. Hannah gave her an encouraging smile. Of course it did. What happened next? I opened the mail and I found a check from my mother. We bought some stocks together and we made a good profit when we sold them. If that check hadn't come, I think I would have been all right. But just looking at that money made me want to gamble. That's understandable. What did you do? I called Ron. We're supposed to call our sponsor right away when we think we're in trouble. But Ron wasn't home, and Danielle swallowed hard. I'm not proud of what I did next, Hannah. Hannah figured she knew what Danielle had done, but she asked anyway. You went out to gamble? Yes. A tear rolled down Danielle's cheek, and she wiped it away with her soggy tissue. I used the ATM to deposit the check and take out some cash. And then I drove out to the Indian casino. That's where I ran into Ron. Ron was gambling at Twin Pines? No. Danielle shook her head quickly. Ron was a tower of strength, Hannah. He'd completely beaten his addiction. He told me once that he didn't even have the urge to gamble anymore. Then what was he doing there? He was passing out brochures in the parking lot. One look at me and he knew I was in trouble. And he got his car and followed me back to my house. I was really glad he did. Boyd's Grand Cherokee wasn't running very well, and I was afraid it would break down on the way back. Did you know what time that was? 11 o'clock. Daniel answered promptly. The grandfather clock in the hallway was striking when I walked in the door. And Ron stayed there with you? No, he waited around the corner for me. I was in pretty bad shape, Hannah. I almost scraped the side of my Lincoln when I pulled into the garage. Hannah nodded and waited for her to go on. She could sympathize with Daniel, but this wasn't the time. She still needed more information from her. I went inside to check the answering machine again, and then I walked down the alley to meet Ron. He drove me to his apartment, and we stayed up all night drinking coffee. That's exactly what happened, Hannah. I swear it. Why did you go to work with him? Ron was late, and he didn't have time to take me home until later. I went along on his home delivery route, and then he went back to the dairy and loaded up for his commercial customers. I only went to one commercial place with him. Right after we stocked the school cooler, he dropped me off at home. What time did Ron bring you home? It was 7:20. I looked at my watch before I got out of his truck. I figured that my neighbors might be up by then, so I ducked in the alley and went in through the garage. Do you think you would have noticed if anyone was following Ron's truck? I don't know. Daniel looked frightened. I've been thinking about it all day, but I don't remember seeing anyone behind us. Hannah leaned forward. If Daniel knew where Ron had been planning to go when he dropped her off, it would be very helpful. Think hard, Daniel. Did Ron say anything about where he was going when he left you? He didn't say anything except goodbye. Daniel's voice quavered, and she dabbed at her eyes again. I tried to talk to him into going to the dentist for his tooth, but I don't think he did. Ron had this thing about being totally reliable and making his deliveries on time. Hannah's eyebrows shot up. His tooth? What was wrong with his tooth? I think it cracked. He got into a fight with one of the casino bouncers when he tried to hand out some pamphlets inside. His jaw was all swollen up, and it was hurting him a lot. I made him put ice on it. That's good for the swelling. Hannah flashed back to the last time she'd seen Ron alive. He'd been standing by his truck, cupping the side of his face. She thought that he looked pensive, but he could have been holding his hand over a cracked tooth. Was Ron's cracked tooth on the left side, Daniel? Yes! Daniel gasped and stared at Hannah as if she'd just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. How did you know that? I saw him loading the truck when I drove to work this morning, and he was cupping the left side of his jaw. But I didn't see you. That's because I was scrunched down in the seat. I didn't want anyone to spot me with Ron and get the wrong idea. That made sense. Hannah knew the local gossips would have had a heyday if they'd seen Daniel with Ron. Can you describe the bouncer who hit Ron? I wasn't there. It happened about an hour before I got to the casino. I think you could find him though. Ron told me he landed a couple of good punches and he was pretty sure he gave the guy a black eye. And that's all you know? That's everything I know, Hannah. Daniel gave a deep sigh.